Life has been tough, and there were many times that I felt that things were unfair and unjust in my life. But life is about embracing and overcoming. And if I was to give advice to myself at 20 years of age, if I was to give advice to my children, I would always say, embrace your hardships. Embrace your circumstances. Don't fight it, because fighting something will strengthen the problem. You have to work through it. You have to channel what you do have and your resources that you have and embrace the problem. And then you bring your family and your friends to help you work through that, because you cannot do it on your own. My biggest mistake was working 3 jobs and raising 3 children in Department of Housing and thinking that it was something I could do on my own. Was I vulnerable? Yes, because I developed panic attacks. I got very sick. I ended up having 2 children in hospital at the same time. My son had broken his elbow at school and he had to have an operation. And then my son had just been diagnosed with Kawasaki's disease. Sebastian was 7 and Samuel was about 4 at that time. And they both ended up in hospital. And my parents had gone away. I had nobody around me. And I thought to myself, I have God. God will be there for me. But what I neglected to realize, that even though you have God in your life, God did not make you to be alone. He's put family and friends in our lives to help us for moments such as this. And I had never learnt vulnerability like I had learnt at that stage. And I remember the nurse coming up to me and running up the corridor of this hospital, and one son was crying coming out of operation. The other son was screaming from the nurses putting needles into him. And I just ran up the corridor, got on my knees, and I said, God, help me. And I got up and started walking back to that room, because I knew I needed to be there for my boys. And as I walked back to the room, the nurse looked at me and she said, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm not. And I threw my arms around her and she put her arms around me. And for the first time in my life, I had reached a stage where I was vulnerable. I had to empty out all this competence, all this stage in my life where I thought, I can do this. I'm a single mum, I can do this. But you can't. And at that stage, I realized I needed help. And for the first time in my life, I had allowed someone to take care of me and give me strength. And she was there and she caught me in my vulnerability. So I had learned what it meant to embrace where I was at, my vulnerability, my pain, my suffering, and I had to work through that. And through that, I learned to overcome.